When I went to Israel and Palestine in 2015, I was brought there by the Foundation for Middle East Peace that brought a cohort of journalists of color, and a few white journalists as well, to speak with activists, Palestinian activists, Israeli activists, to speak with lawmakers inside of the Knesset, to get a better understanding and situational understanding of what had been transpiring in this part of the world. Now, let me preface everything that I'm going to say with which is I am not a Middle Eastern scholar. I am not a scholar in Israeli politics, in Palestinian politics, right? What I am sharing with you is my experience that I had, which I am an expert in. I'm an expert in me. I'm an expert in understanding injustice. I'm an expert in what it means to live in a society that marginalizes those that are not part of the mainstream or deemed undesirable. I am an expert in that. While I was there, I had the great fortune of being taken around to Jerusalem, to East Jerusalem, to the West Bank, to Tel Aviv, to all different parts of this very small, fractious, but incredibly important in the foundation of every religion, every mainstream religion when I'm talking about Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. So not every religion, excuse me. The mainstreamed big three that we often discuss in this country. Because let me tell you, what is happening in India is a story for another day. What it happens in African nations is a story for another day. So I'm talking about the big three. And this place that is not very big, but that has been filled with so much bloodshed, so much pain, and so much injustice. What I will tell you is that my experience was shocking. Because when you are a Black person in America, you understand discrimination and hatred through the lens of white supremacy. You understand difference in terms of physical difference, right? The melanated Black people in this country have been mistreated, abused, terrorized, tortured, raped, beaten, expelled for centuries in the United States, and still are. Beaten in the streets like dogs, suffocated in the street like dogs, hung from trees, all of it. And we understand that, again, through the lens of white supremacy. If you are not white and you are not Christian, you are not treated well in America, nor have you been. But when I went to Israel and Palestine, what initially shocked me was the fact that, to me, there was no physical difference at all. Everyone looked like members of the same family. And I looked for what is this thing that has you cage people, right? Because that is what Gaza is. which I wasn't able to visit because at the time there was a spark in fighting. And so there was a lot of bombing that was happening, and the trip was almost called off. But for those on the trip who had been to Gaza prior, explained conditions that no human being should ever be forced to live in. You see, we come from a space and place where we say, well, if you don't like it, then leave. Palestinians don't have that ability because they don't have freedom of movement. They don't have bodily autonomy. They don't have self-determination. So when you are seeing and witnessing right now people leaving because it's too dangerous, those are free Israelis that are leaving, that have the ability to leave. The people who are being bombed off of the face of this earth don't have that same freedom. They're not allowed to leave. They are forced to live in utter sickness and despair and grief. I cannot express to you some of the eyes that I saw on my trips to the West Bank, to East Jerusalem, going through security. And as a Black woman, I can tell you that what it felt like was a combination of the worst Jim Crow and the worst apartheid that I had ever read about. And it was something else to experience it up close and personal outside of a museum. So when you are being told that there are only one side's life that matters, and you see people arguing, and you may yourself be choosing to get on social media to argue with people, understand that you are arguing about humanity. Right? Everyone, regardless of who they worship, whether they worship, what they look like, who they love, and what body they are in, able or disabled, should have self-determination, should be able, by virtue of being born human, be born free. So anywhere where you see that there are powers that be whose job it is to dehumanize and decouple people from their humanity so that the justification of their mistreatment can be because they are not like us. They don't pray like us. They don't love like us. They don't look like us. Understand that that is propaganda that is centuries old. I understand the desire to want to show your solidarity by putting up the Israeli flag, wearing, right, it as if it is Ukraine. But I want people to understand that both Palestinians and Israelis deserve freedom, self-determination, and to live free of fear, persecution, and abuse. And to say, right, if all white people are not MAGA, if all white people are not the KKK, then all Palestinians are not Hamas. Then all Palestinians are not terrorists. Then all Muslims and all that pray differently should not be subjugated. Because living a life through fear is no life at all. Because for me, in my expertise as a Black queer woman, being a Black queer woman in these United States, I know what was said and what continues to be said about Black people to justify excessive force. The centuries-old lies, superpower strength of Black men. So you need to have 3, 4, 5, 6 officers suffocate to death in Eric Gardner. The presumption of guilt by virtue of your skin. So you need to shoot first and ask questions later because you fear for your life. I know what it is like to be a part of a group that is marginalized, that is demonized and dehumanized. Being and having been oppressed can sometimes open the door to you turning into the oppressor and making the same justification that was made for your end, making that for someone else's and calling that righteousness and saying that anyone that objects to that then objects to your humanity and your right to exist. Having been oppressed, having been murdered and tortured does not give you the liberty to do that to other people. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what ethnic group you come from. What we are and what we are seeing is a bunch of wounded souls who have never been healed continue to inflict wound after wound, death blow after death blow. This is no way to live. Whether it is inside of the United States, whether it is in the Middle East, whether it is on the continent of Africa, whether it is in Asia, having been subjugated does not give you the license to subjugate. And we should ask ourselves as Americans, just like we did when we all witnessed the murder of George Floyd, your tax dollars are going to fund all of the hashtags that follow Black Lives Matter, that were people with families, with lives, with futures. They are going to fund the same oppression in countries around the world, including Israel and Palestine. So when I see cities around the world turn blue in solidarity, what that says to me is solidarity for who? Because what color should we put up for solidarity with humanity? What color is that? Because it isn't about calling for peace in the Middle East. What you're doing is picking a side. And what I'm saying is that there is no side to humanity. That's what propaganda has you do, is make a choice where there isn't one. We don't need to devalue in order to show our solidarity. Showing solidarity is asking and fighting for a just and free world. From book bans, to marriage, to freedom of movement, to freedom to drink clean water, freedom to make a family or not, freedom to pray in the way that fills your soul or not. That's what we are fighting for. We are not fighting against a people or a religion. We are not on somebody's access. That is somebody else's political agenda. That is not our truth. Our truth is about humanity. Our truth is about love. Our truth is about creation, not deprivation. So when you find yourself shedding tears for one group and not the other, ask yourself why. That is the reason Mama Till, Emmett Till's mother, opened up his casket to say that her son's life mattered just like everybody else's. The people inside of Gaza matter just as much as the people outside of that wall. And if you feel differently and you think differently, you should ask yourself why.